Welcome back, focus learners, to another explainer. Today, we're looking at something we all do, usually without giving it a second thought. I'm talking about our everyday television and media habits. But we aren't just going to look at screen time statistics here. We're actually diving into a pretty profound philosophy from our source material, exploring the actual energy exchange that happens every single time you hit play. Have you ever stopped and wondered why we're so incredibly drawn to toxic, scandalous, or violent media in the first place? Like, why do we sit there, sometimes for hours on end, just watching relationships fall apart, or people screaming at each other on our screens? Well, it turns out this isn't just a simple bad habit or a guilty pleasure, it's actually deeply connected to our internal state. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at media consumption and inner state. Then we're going to unpack this fascinating concept called the 3-7 law of nature. After that, we'll dive into the idea of don't avoid, digest it. And finally, we'll wrap up with true virtue and energy. Let's get right into it. Section 1, media consumption and inner state. Let's kick things off with the micro perspective and look at the root emotional cause of our media diet. Think about two totally different states of being. In one really common scenario, we just sit in front of the TV out of pure loneliness or isolation, right? When human connection breaks down, we kind of just fill that void with the glow of a screen. But when people start to actively study, find real joy, and have meaningful conversations with others, something amazing actually happens. Their television habits naturally drop by about 70%. They just don't need the TV anymore because they're engaged in something way more interesting and fulfilling in their actual real lives. And that brings us to a deeply impactful realization from our source material. What you watch is literally a preview of your life's energy. When you sit there and absorb negative content, the fights, the betrayals, the scandals, it isn't just passive entertainment. In this philosophy, information is energy. So you're taking in a massive influx of bad energy. According to this perspective, nature is actually using this as a literal warning, showing you the exact things that might be headed your way if you don't change your current frequency. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3-7 law of nature. Let's see how this builds into the universal rules of the game. Okay, so let's unpack this 3-7 law of nature. The core idea here is that the universe doesn't just drop a massive crisis right in your lap without any warning. If a certain negative theme, say a failing business or a really bitter divorce, shows up in your life about 30% of the time, maybe just through characters on a TV show, that's your warning. But if you ignore it and that negative energy grows to consume 70% of your focus, it means reality is no longer just sending a warning. It is coming directly for you. We call this escalation process gradation. Step 1, you start seeing it on TV. It's distant, separated by a screen. But step 2, if you don't adjust your energy, it gets closer. You suddenly start hearing about these exact same problems happening to your friends or acquaintances. And then step 3, if you still haven't learned the lesson, the concentration thickens, and you experience it yourself. That bankruptcy or that conflict you were just passively watching, it becomes your own reality. So how on earth do we stop this escalation? That brings us to Section 3, don't avoid, digest it. This is a massive paradigm shift in how we handle negative energy. To really get this, we have to redefine a word we all know, study. Now, in this context, study absolutely doesn't mean hitting the books in a quiet library. It's the active process of digesting life's hardships and observing the mistakes of others so you don't repeat them. So when you see a business failing on TV or hear about a friend's relationship ending, you don't just passively consume the gossip. You use it as study material. You internalize the lesson so that specific energy doesn't manifest in your own life. It's super tempting to just avoid negativity altogether, isn't it? Just run away from it. But if you run away from a bad situation without learning from it, you completely miss the lesson. And because you missed it, this philosophy suggests you're eventually going to face a bigger, harder version of it down the road. On the flip side, if you look at the flaws of the world, process them, and learn from them, you've successfully absorbed the lesson. And once the lesson is learned, the universe doesn't need to teach it to you anymore. The bad energy simply disappears from your path. 0. That is the exact number of times you'll see a negative situation again if you fully digest and learn from that initial warning. Seriously, if you see a warning on TV and you genuinely use it to reflect on your own life and correct your own actions, the gradation stops dead in its tracks. The universe recognizes that you got the message, and that specific hardship will never cross your path again. Finally, let's look at Section 4, true virtue and energy. Now that we understand how to protect ourselves at the micro level, how do we shift our energy on a macro level to actually help others? The really crucial point here is that we have the power to actively help our friends and family bypass these negative traps. Think about it. If you give a friend a truly great book or share a positive teaching that really captivates them, they naturally stop watching that toxic TV. They literally won't have the time or the appetite for it. By simply sharing good information, you're helping them shift their personal energy to a completely different positive frequency, which vastly improves their overall quality of life. You're literally altering the gradation of their future. And this completely flips how we view charity and helping others. True virtue isn't always about giving money, especially if you don't have any to give in the first place. True virtue is sharing the teachings, the wisdom, and the positive energy you've personally received. If you learn something that betters your life, handing that knowledge over to someone else so they can avoid their own hardships is presented here as the absolute highest form of virtuous action. We're going to leave you with this really powerful thought from our source material. Do virtuous deeds for others as much as you have received. Repaying the teacher means benefiting others with what you have learned. The knowledge you take in today is the exact energy you're going to radiate tomorrow. So the next time you feel the urge to binge watch other people's conflicts, you got to ask yourself, are you just feeding the void? Or are you ready to finally digest the lesson and change your trajectory? I'll see you in the next explainer.